said this morning about adapting. You know, when he said that he showed the picture of Darwin, and he said that those who can adapt the best to their surroundings will survive and will win. And that wasn't the story of me. I had to adapt, learn new and different ways to do things. And now I use that word when I go out and speak, adapt. I use the 5 letters of it, 5 component letters, A, D, A, P, T. There's my first one. A-D-A-P-T. I was proud of that. But I think those words, and it's really been great because they form sort of 5 strategies that help us to overcome and to adapt. The first one is A, adjustability. D, determination. A, accountability. P, perseverance. And T, trust. And each one of those things helped me along the way to overcome what things that I had to overcome. I like to talk, the first one is adjustability. And that has a lot to do with, I've heard a lot of you guys talking today about innovation and thinking of ways to do things, and that was the story of my life, you know. I have to give a lot of credit to the people in my hometown because they helped me out a lot. You know, they took time to teach me the new and different ways to do things, you know. My 2nd grade teacher taught me how to tie my shoes. My mom and dad taught me pretty much everything. I'll never forget, I played football in high school, and my high school football coach called me up one day, and I had never played, and he said, "Get down here, you're going to play quarterback for us." And I was shocked, I couldn't believe it. So I went down there, and we had a good team that year, and they're preparing us for the season, and when our head coach, quarterback's coach, and our defensive coordinator are all under center trying to figure out how to take a snap. It was that kind of generosity, you know, that I was surrounded with. It gave me a chance. And so adjustability, it was a big key in my growing up, learning to find new and different ways to do things. And I brought my glove. I wanted to show you how I switched the glove on and off, but I need a volunteer to play a little catch with me. And I was hoping maybe you want to do it? You asked the most questions this morning, so I thought maybe you deserved it.
I like dirt, you know, that was a soccer ball.
What I would do is, and I developed it with my dad just out in the front yard. I just catch it, take it off, and throw, and get ready for the ball to come back at me. I did it a little faster without a sport coat. But I would just catch it and throw. So it's just a little different way of doing things, just practicing and getting used to it. Here, you can keep that. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. The middle part of my strategy, and it's perfectly placed, I believe, is A, accountability. It sits at the middle. It's at the core and the heart. I believe it's the most important. And that basically says that we have an accountability to others and we have an accountability to ourselves. First, our accountability to others. I like to look at it as our teammates in sports speak, but I don't look at it as just teammates in a baseball sense. I look at it as family members, as people we work with, bringing our best selves to each situation. I believe we have an obligation to do that, to try our best. You know, a Major League clubhouse is a strange dynamic. Over 162 games, if you look around in a clubhouse, there's always somebody who's doing pretty well. And they've got the music up real loud. And then there's some people over here that aren't doing as well, and they're kind of grumpy a little bit. So it was always trying to build that right chemistry. And I had a teammate who was great at breaking through that sort of tension. How many people are from Southern California here? So you're familiar with Rex Hudler? Some of the announcing that he does on the Angel games. Well, Rex was a great teammate. He was somebody who made a career basically out of his positive attitude and his enthusiasm. He used to walk into that clubhouse, he'd look around and he'd say, "What are you going to be today? Are you going to be a fountain or are you going to be a drain?" And I thought that was a great statement. You know, you could either be caught up in your own world and be a drain, Or you could have your house in order enough to lift somebody else up and understand that the entire team's chemistry was the important thing. Rex had another story with that I went a long way towards his attitude and accountability. Back when Bo Jackson played for the Angels, Bo was coming up to bat in a big, crucial part of the game. Couple men on, the Angels were down by 3 runs. Bo Jackson stepped up and hit a 3-run home run. Wow, exciting. Late in the game, he kind of ran around the bases, stepped on first, stepped on second, stepped on third, came home, came in the dugout, kind of limp-wristedly shook everybody's hand and sat down. Well, you can imagine Rex. He was... Next day in stretching exercises, he looks over to Mark Langston, a teammate, and he says, "Mark, I can't believe Bo. He had a chance to pump our boys up there. He didn't do anything. He didn't show any emotion." Mark looked at Rex and said, "Well, why don't you go explain that to Bo?" So Rex said, "I will." To his credit, he did. He walked over to Bo Jackson, and they had an animated discussion. He walked away. Sure enough, a couple days later, maybe a week or two, Bo Jackson comes up in a very similar situation. This time the Angels are down by 1 run. 1 man on, Bo Jackson, pinch hit, home run. So everyone's aware of what's happened now, sitting in the dugout. Bo takes off. I mean, he just sprinted to first. He stomps on first base, stomps on second, pounds on third, comes home and jumps on the plate. Who's waiting for him at the top step but Rex Hudler? Bo comes in, high fives Rex, chest bumps him, and knocks him to the ground. Rex is laying in sunflower seeds, tobacco juice, Gatorade. He's got cups all around. He looks up at Bo and he goes, "That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of enthusiasm we need." Rex is something. But that went a long way towards our accountability, bringing our best selves and the effect we can have on other people. More importantly, I believe in accountability is our obligation to the abilities we've been given, no matter what they are. We may have someone over here who's the most talented person in the room and someone over here who's the least talented, but I believe the obligation to make the most of those abilities is equal. One of the great joys of my career was playing in the beautiful ballparks all over the country. Fenway Park, Yankee Stadium, Toronto, Texas, Anaheim, all over. These fields are immaculate. They're perfect. You don't get a bad hop. The mounds are incredible. But many times, underneath those fields and in the hallways and tunnels of the stadiums is where the players hang out. And once my playing became known around the country, word got out of how I played, families started to come. People asked for meetings, moms and dads, and they would bring their kids. So I was just a baseball player, but they'd bring kids facing challenges that I had never dreamed of. Birth defects and handicaps, different things, wanting to know advice, asking me what I would say. And I felt a responsibility to that. Although I was trying to be the best baseball player I could be, I wasn't necessarily trying to be a role model. In the end, what I felt like was the most important thing I could pass on to these kids and to their parents was to try, to get in the game, take a risk, make the most of whatever abilities you've been given. Never use the circumstances of your life as an excuse, because people will allow it, People will forgive it. But you'll know in your heart that you've given in and that you haven't made the most of what you've been given. It's that mirror test, and it doesn't sound that hard, but take a look in the mirror and ask, am I making the most of the abilities I've been given, whatever they are, and whatever aspect of your life you're in? Am I being the best dad I can be? Am I being the best pitcher? You know, one time I was playing for the New York Yankees, and I was having a tough time, and I was just average, 500. And the New York Times writer wrote that I was an underachiever. And my determination slipped a little bit. And I asked him, I said, you know, how can you call me an underachiever? And he looked at me and said, you're not pitching well. He was exactly right. I wasn't living up to the abilities that I had. The fact is, I was given a pretty good left arm. And the focus is on what's been given, not what's been taken away. And that's the focus, what I always wanted it to be. And I slipped right there, and I always regret saying that to him. I always regret wanting that excuse. Never make excuses for the circumstances you were born in.